Hebrews, Hebrews, Hebrews. This is our Prophets of Awakening. This is our advanced Bible study night, Tuesday, the 1st of August, 2023. Okay, we'll be dealing with Joseph and Pharaoh out of the book of Jasher tonight for our topic for discussion. Okay, you can go to our YouTube channel, check out our videos, to the Prophets of Awakening, check out our videos. It's a lot of information given, and the videos will connect dots for you, lead you to the truth of the Holy Scriptures. If you like what you're hearing and receiving through the channel and the videos, I'm asking you to like, share, and subscribe. And you feel the need to support the channel, you can go to our Cash App at the bottom of the video. Okay, this is a non-Messianic channel, and by that I mean, first of all, we don't subscribe to the New Testament, and we deal with the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, so-called Book of Remembrance, and the Torah, first 5 books of the Old Testament that was given to Moses by the Lord of Hosts. Shalom and welcome to Prophets of Awakening, and welcome to our advanced Bible study. We're going to do our normal, which is a moment of silence, a prayer, read Psalms, then we'll go into our current events, look at a little no information, and then we'll open it up for some questions and comments. Then we'll go into our topic, which is, like I said earlier, Joseph and Pharaoh out of the book of Jasher. Okay. This moment of silence is for the Lord of Hosts, our Redeemer, and all that He's doing to bring about our prophesied deliverance in these last days. Oh Lord, we come before Thee at this day, thanking You for Your mercy and Your great power. And we appreciate You, oh Lord, for Your patience and Your guidance in these last days. Oh Lord, we thank You for Your awakening us to this great understanding of Your word. And when we come before You, that You keep and direct and guide us through the week. Oh Lord, we see Your mighty hand in the world's affairs and how You are constructing Your people's deliverance, and we trust and rely upon Thee. And for this cause, we honor and respect You greatly. Turn not Thy face from us, but allow us in our seeking of You to find You, O Lord, and to do well with You. Peace be unto You. Okay. With that being said, read a song. Okay. Read Psalms 132. It's a prayer for the blessings on the sanctuary. Okay. Lord, remember David and all his afflictions, how he swore unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob. Surely I will not come into the tabernacle of my house, nor go up into my bed. I will not give sleep to mine eyes, or slumber to my eyelids, until I find out a place for the Lord, a habitation for the mighty God of Jacob. Lo, we heard it in Ephesus. We found it in the fields of the woods. We will go into His tabernacle. We will worship at His footstool. Arise, O Lord, until I rest, Thou in the ark of Thy strength. Let the priests be clothed with righteousness, and let Thy saints shout with joy. For Thy servant David's sake, turn not away the face of Thy anointed. The Lord has sworn in truth unto David. He will not turn from it. For the fruit of His body will I set upon Thy throne. If Thy children will keep my covenant and my testimony that I shall teach them, that their children shall also sit upon the throne forevermore. For the Lord hath chosen Zion. He hath desired it for His habitation. This is my rest forever. Here will I dwell. I have desired it. I will abundantly bless her provisions. I will satisfy her poor with bread. I will also clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints shall shout aloud for joy. There will I make the horn of David the bud. I have ordained a lamp for my anointing. His enemies will I clothe with shame, but upon himself his crown shall flourish. So anybody have any comments on that. That's Psalms 132. I like to read that because it's a clear understanding on who the Messiah is. He has promises in here that and prophecies is in this song that he's going that David is the Messiah, especially verse 18. He tells David that he's going to resurrect him in the last days and put him back on his own throne. So that's a direct contradiction to the New Testament. When they tell you JC gonna sit on the throne. So anybody else got any comments on that? Okay. Go to some current events. Okay.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to the channel. Are we preparing the best we can our homes for the possible collapse of the economy and these stores that are shutting down? What would you do if your grocery stores were not
There's something to think about.
able to open or
It's
went
coming.
out of business and you didn't have one near you? Maybe you have to drive over an hour to get to one. Or, God forbid, we enter another pandemic. What would you do? What have you changed since the first one that we had in 2020? Have you corrected things that maybe needed to be tweaked that you didn't do before? Like, have you stocked up on items in case you're not able to get out to the store? Have you stocked up on items in case you lose your job? Millions of people are losing their jobs all across the country. We see people losing their jobs. This is affecting households and how they survive. Will they be able to keep a roof over their head? Will they be able to feed their family? Just the bare necessities. So if you have not started tweaking some things, considering what happened in 2020, we see all of these new viruses that are trying to creep in different states, and it's a matter of time before something major hits. So why not prepare now for those things? You can either go out, and yes, food prices have gone up. In some areas, you can still get items at a reasonable price, but maybe not others. So that being said, do what you can with what you have. If you have the funds to somehow, then do that. If you don't, then maybe think about starting a garden. If you don't have the space to start a garden, we have to figure out how we can better be more self-sufficient and self-reliant. But don't forget that in being self-sufficient and self-reliant, you cannot forget about your family. Informing them of what you are doing so that hopefully they will get on board with it. And if not, maybe if you can get a few extra items for your household, do that, because 9 times out of 10, those who didn't prepare will be knocking on your door. I have been slowly doing things and putting things on my shelf, food on my shelf, medication on my shelves. I just did my first time canning pasta sauce. That was exciting. It was nerve-wracking, but it needed to be done because the price of this food is not going down anytime soon. So how I look at it, where I can cut, costs here, I'm going to do it, because I may not be able to cut that cost. So just like all of my news stories and things like that, me keeping you informed of news you can use and news you may not be able to use, but you can share with other people. Those videos do really well here. If you could help me out when it comes to preserving food, those videos that I put out, get those videos out to everybody. Everybody needs to know, well, if you can't do it, then fine. Go out and buy your food, but make sure you're stocking up for your family. Make sure your family has what they need with food and medications and things like that. Make sure you have what you need to protect your family and your food in your house, because when the SHTF does happen, and that could be different for anybody, anywhere, people will do strange things. We see crime has increased as is with these stores and with people scamming and trying to take your money. We have to stay at least one step ahead, if not three. So in doing that, preserving your food is a great way to put food away, and cost effective too, especially if you could grow some of it and then resource out to maybe a farmer's market for the rest of it. But do what you can with what you can. So here's my first time canning pasta.
Okay. Any comments on that? Okay. Got another one.
About the new BRICS currency. Now, as the world seems to be inching closer to World War III, the real war isn't with Russia or China. It's something that's actually much larger. And in fact,
yeah, this is one of the things I've been talking about for a long time, and a lot of people not prepared for. Check it out.
The wars aren't even the problems. They're only the symptoms. Because to control the world, you must control the money. And as the U.S. has weaponized the global monetary system against Russia and China, and of course any other adversary, a new system is rapidly being deployed, and a new one is to be announced next month. So in this video, I'm going to break down what's really happening with the international monetary system, the historical parallels that show us the roadmap for where we're going. I'm going to break down the new BRICS system that's being launched next month and how almost everyone is wrong about it. I'm going to explain how it's going to work, the chance of success, what it means for the dollar, and what I think is really the best and the most logical step. So let's go. All right, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark Moss, and of course I make these videos to change the way you think about money. It's hard to tell what the heck is going on right now, and we are witnessing the birth of a new monetary system. Well, the death of an old one and the birth of a new one, and let's talk about that. Now, a little bit going back about me, the reason why I care about this so much is because after barely surviving the 2008 great financial crash, if you've heard my story, you know that's when I became hyper-focused on the monetary system. And I mean, like, focused like my life, like my family's life depended on it. And after beginning to learn how it all worked, I became a gold bug. I realized that it was the endless printing of fiat currencies, and it was the Fed's and other central bank policies of constantly manipulating the price and supply of money that continue to cause even greater booms and bust cycles over and over and over.
So we understand. The Most High says, Esau I love. I mean, Jacob I love, Esau I hate. So why do we hate Esau? Because Esau is a robber. He's a robber, and he goes against the Most High's laws and statutes, especially when it comes to money. He loan money out, usually when that's a no-no when it comes to the Most High's statutes and his laws. So when you understand that he's the one behind the banking system, he's the one behind all the money, all this things going on with the money. So when they say the higher ups and people that it's Esau that's manipulating the money, and what he been doing, like he said, he calls it bust, and he calls it rises and falls, the ups and downs of the market dictate what happens. So he's the one behind all this that's going on now. It's not only America, but he got a plan, like I was telling you about. He got a plan to rule the world for 1,000 years, just like Hitler was. That's what Hitler wanted to do. They want to rule the world. These Zionists want to rule the world for 1,000 years from Jerusalem. So he's the one behind this monetary system, and he's bringing down this new system he's bringing in place. Not only gonna collapse America, he's gonna collapse everybody else. He gonna be, when it's all over with. So he think he's gonna be the last man standing. Israel gonna be the ruling power.
Now, studying central bank monetary policies and historical cycles, it's all led to a single conclusion. And it's really more of a fact than an opinion. And that is that we're on the verge of the collapse of not just the United States dollar, as you hear so many people talking about it, but really we're witnessing the breakdown and collapse of the entire international monetary system. Now, while many nations have had the reserve currency, it was always backed by gold, really all the way up to about 1913, which is when the Federal Reserve Bank was created, which really marked the creation of a new monetary system. Just like the averages, they last about 30-ish years. So then in 1945, a new monetary system was born. And that was born at the Bretton Woods Conference, of course, organized by good old J.P. Morgan and the other powerful bankers. Now, if you want to read up on that, check out the book titled The Creature from Jekyll Island, which breaks all this down in great detail, or watch the video interview I did with Nomi Prinz, who understands this as good or better than anyone. I'm going to link to it in the description down below. It's definitely worth your time to watch if you want to learn about that. But going back to the Bretton Woods Conference, the dollar was officially designated to be the world's reserve currency, and in which the dollar was to be backed by gold at an exchange rate of $35 per ounce of gold. And then all the other currencies of the world we pegged to the dollar, thereby all the currencies of the world were to be still backed by gold. Now, of course, most of you know that that only lasted about another, 30-ish years. And so in 1971, then President Richard Nixon took the U.S. and, of course, by extension, the entire world off the gold standard. And so the global monetary system entered its next, and still currently its existing system, for which, for this time in history, it's just a fiat money system, which means it's only a paper money system. There's no gold backing. This means that all the currencies of the world would not be backed by gold, and they're now all based on just a floating exchange rate, right? Without a golden anchor. And now today, the existing monetary system is over 50 years old. So the world's way overdue for a new monetary system. And this system, it's been breaking down fast. But it was really taken out behind the woodshed and put down with the unprecedented sanctions that the U.S. and its allies imposed on Russia following the invasion of Ukraine. Of course, that created a massive urgency for every other government in the world to scramble to move towards a new monetary system. Now, while the sanctions take many forms, many effects, many different countries and areas of commerce and trade, it hits them all differently. But what they all have in common is the use of the US dollar as the principal weapon. Now, every nation in the world was put on notice that as long as they're dependent on dollars for holding assets or for purchasing global commodities, that they're going to be under the control of those who control the dollar payment systems, which is basically the US, maybe with some help from the big European and Japanese central banks. Now, this is most of the reason or the catalyst for the fairly rapid development of this new BRICS currency, which is set to be announced next month. And while Russia and China have been de-dollarizing for over the last decade, I think that if the severe anti-Russian sanctions imposed by the U.S. and its allies didn't happen, no, maybe we wouldn't see this big move taking place right now, at least not so rushed. Now, it's because all the trust in the current monetary system was lost in an instant. My dad made sure that I understood from the time that I was a kid that it takes a lifetime to build your reputation, and you can ruin it in a single instant. And that's exactly what the U.S. did. Now, this doesn't mean that the dollar will lose its reserve status overnight. So if you want to see how this plays out, if you want to see where the dollar is ultimately heading and the path and the time frames, then we just have to look back into history to see when this happened before. If we look back to how the US dollar took over the status from the UK's pound sterling, we can see that it was a process and not an event. Now, even though it was officially called out in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference, the pound really started to lose its status, about 30 years before, right around 1914, right around World War I. Now, the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference was merely a recognition of the process of the dollar reserve's dominance that was already decades in the making. And so, just like with the pound sterling's loss of status, we can see the same slippage in the dollar's role as the leading global reserve currency. And it's not really something that's going to happen overnight. It's also a process. But the unprecedented dollar sanctions against Russia really exaggerated and accelerated the process. And although the process is relatively gradual, no investor should be surprised if it happens sooner rather than later. It's like the quote from Ernest Hemingway's 1926 novel, The Sun Also Rises. He said, one of the characters in there asked, "How'd you go bankrupt?" And they said, "Well, two ways." They said, "Gradually," and then suddenly. Now, the dollar could lose its reserve status gradually, and then suddenly. But this isn't about the dollar losing its reserve status. It's about the entire global fiat paper money system losing its status. It's about the loss of faith and trust in the entire global monetary system and a brand new system emerging. Now, back to the reputation and trust. Once you've lost it, what do you do? If no one's going to trust the fiat money system of any nation, if the people won't use or accept the money, what can be done to restore the trust? Well, it's sort of like we might need a trustless system. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But because while I think this is the future, the nations of the world have something up their sleeves. They think they have a way to restore trust, and that is going back to something old. That's right, a gold-backed system. So enter the rise of the BRICS and their gold-linked currency. Notice I said linked, not backed. All right, this is scheduled to be announced August 22nd. And I think there's a really big misconception by most people as to what it is and what it isn't and how it works. So let me break it down. Now, if they get this off the ground, the keyword if, right? If they get it off the ground, it's something that I think we really want to keep an eye on because it is something that has the potential to really affect the United States dollar. Now, I've talked about the BRICS a lot, so I'm not going to go back all through that. But the BRICS nations, they're a big, credible alternative to the Western homogeny acting together. They represent one pole of a new multipolar or a maybe bipolar, probably a multipolar world. But let's clear one thing up. It's not a new gold standard, but it does have something in common with gold. So there's been all kinds of hype. There's all kinds of misunderstandings about how this new currency is going to work. So I want to clear up some of the confusion. Now, like I said, people are saying that it's like gold-backed yuan, right? And that's going to be the new global reserve currency. But I don't think that's a possibility at all because China, even though they've been adding tons and tons of gold reserves, it doesn't have nearly enough gold to back up their money supply. There's also no significant yuan-denominated bond market, so there's really nothing to invest in, right? You can't have a reserve currency without a huge liquid bond market. Of course, only the U.S. Treasury market really fits that bill, maybe to a little bit of a lesser extent, potentially the bond markets of Japan and Germany, maybe Italy qualify a little bit, really not so much. And so there will be no Chinese reserve currency. There's nothing to invest into with or without gold. And I would say the same is true for the Russian ruble or any other currency or any of the other BRICS members. But here's what I think will happen. The BRICS will launch a new currency. I don't know what it's called, but it will be a neutral currency from all the BRICS nations. So some neutral currency, let's call it neutral. We'll call it that for now. All right, but it's not going to be on a gold standard. Instead, its value will be determined by a reference to the weight of gold. All right, not the price, but the weight. You know, sort of like the pound sterling. That's how it's got its name, right? So here's how it would likely work. The value of one neutral coin will be determined by a specific weight of gold. So let's say like one neutral equals 1/10 of an ounce of gold. So for easy numbers, so then 1/10 of an ounce of gold is worth about $200 USD. Now remember, this isn't an exchange rate, but rather it's a reference point. But if the price of gold moves up, this would mean that the USD is actually going down when it's compared to the neutral because it's tied to the weight of gold, which of course the weight of gold is tied to the price. It will really show the world how the dollar would be collapsing, like you'll see other currencies are collapsing against the dollar today. Now this would work out pretty good for the BRICS members like Russia and China, who are the two largest gold producers in the world, and they're ranked 6th and 7th respectively among the 100 nations with gold reserves. And sorry if you're in Canada, you have 0 gold reserves. And it's not just Russia and China building up massive gold reserves. In fact, central banks around the world bought a record 1,136 tons of gold last year, which is the greatest amount since 1950. And so you should be asking yourself why. And we're awesome.
Okay. Any comments on that? Okay. Got some need to know information right here. So, yeah, like this. Okay.
Shalom, everyone.
Shalom.
Yeah, welcome to the channel, guys. We are journeying with us, family of 7. And yes, today in this video, we're going to be talking to you guys about something, or I'd say reacting to something that we recently ran across. It's a video talking about a lot of good points. So stay tuned, guys. Just make sure you leave your comment below and let us know what you think about what she's talking about.
We're saying the rule of divide and conquer, that game is over. But we are now awoken, our eyes are open, and we're coming home to re-engage with our brothers and sisters. So yes, Africans on the continent must participate. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about issues of dual citizenship, when you talk about the issues of establishing a sixth region,
You hear the drone beat.
the headquarters outside Africa, we're going to have to go back to the parliaments all over Africa to have those issues ratified. The children of Africa, they must come and be part of that conversation. They must be prepared. We are hoping that when we come out of the meeting, the PAC 8, we are going to come up with a document that we are going to call the African Diaspora Harare Declaration. As long as they are eating our lunch and we let them, they will continue. We have not stopped them. That is really the problem.
Why aren't we stopping them?
We're afraid. We were taught to be afraid of them. You sit a black man in front of a white man, we start shaking.
I just want to say in response to that, Africans on the continent, and not like this isn't inclusive of everybody, but the people we've come across in Tanzania, I know like in South Africa it's different, maybe a little bit in West Africa, especially Sierra Leone is different. But for the most part, Africans on the continent are definitely afraid of white people, but us in the diaspora are not.
We know where we come from. It's a whole different story. So for our African brothers and sisters, we do need you guys to step up and not be afraid of what's coming, because it is our time to really be on top, and we have to know what's really going on and where Africa is headed. And that's really leadership.
I think it also has to do with how like white Jesus is portrayed a lot in Africa more so than in America. He's portrayed in both systems, but more so here. And that people reverence that idol here as if it's a god. And so until Africans stop idolizing foreigners, you will forever be stuck in exactly what she's talking about. And you're going to see later on in the video exactly what we mean.
Yes, sir. So stay tuned.
Give us an appreciation of how you see that shift of Africans within the diaspora making their way into what a lot proverbially refer to as the motherland.
Yes, the reason the Africans in the diaspora, both the historic diaspora who are descendants of the formerly enslaved and those who left Africa in search of greener pastures, what has kept them from engaging Africa and investing in Africa is the lies from the West. The media has portrayed Africa as a diseased and dying continent. Stay away from there. Don't go there. Now, if I were to use the example of Zimbabwe, it's their own beautiful secret. They want to keep it to themselves. They're coming to invest in Zimbabwe in masses. They're coming to invest in Africa in masses. And yet the average black person out there is being told, don't go to Africa. It's a diseased and dying continent. That is where we need to begin. Refocus, re-educate, and speak truth to power about our Africa. You don't expect those who put us in a position of servitude to undo the damage. They will continue it for as long as we're stupid enough to continue to listen to their lies. Wake up, Africa. Wake up, black people around the world. Africa is your problem. Own it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. For Africa to change, for you to be able to benefit from what is yours. What's in Africa is the inheritance of every black person on earth. But if you're stupid enough to listen to the lies, and while they continue to exploit Africa, while they continue to amass wealth for their children, grandchildren, and generations to come, then they joke on you. But until we educate you, until we make you aware of what is really going on, and that's where we elders come in. We must speak truth to power.
Right.
That's why we need a Pan-African television that's going to boom the history, that's going to let people know that you're part of an experiment to make sure that you continue to be in bondage. understand that you are actually in shackles of the mind. That this war we are in, the war of hashtag African economic liberation.
Right.
We were denied economic liberation and this fake independence.
Right.
Our people must understand the dynamics. That the systems that are in place, the World Bank, IMF, the Bretton Woods Institution, we must fight and push for them to be dismantled.
Right.
Because they never included Africa as part of it. Their success is based on the failure of African nations and other developing nations.
Right.
So why do we participate? Why do African ministers of finance even go to Washington?
Right.
So I'm saying understand the systems,
Right.
the financial systems, the trade systems,
Right.
the UN. Those systems are not for us.
Right.
They must be dismantled.
Right.
Let's not participate in them.
Yes, so like she said earlier, like she was saying, you really have to come home to understand Africa. You cannot understand Africa if you're not here. If you're not moving around and know the systems here, it's going to be a hard time to understand what's going on. So that's a good point that she brought up, is really you have to come here, and that's all that we're trying to tell people. You can look your research up online and everything, but if you're not physically here and moving around and knowing the locals, knowing the system, it's going to be a hard time to understand.
And then for our continental brothers and sisters, you have to stop wanting a seat at the table. That's a phrase we use in America, which basically means you want like to be invited, you want to integrate into the UN and all these things.
Right.
It's not time for integration, it's time for separation. It's time for Africa as a whole to be on its own, to stand on its own 2 feet, to develop systems, entrepreneurship, and all the good things that come with that, so that our communities can thrive. Because when we're dependent on the West, when we're always seeking to, get a handout from them, then that puts us by default on the bottom and they're at the top.
Yeah.
When Africa is the most resource rich, people rich, just rich in general, abundant land on earth.
Exactly. Separation is growth, and this is time to grow. Like really, it's really time to grow. Like it really is. So every system that is in place is really not for us as Africans, as the people, as Bantu people. It's not for us. It's not for us. And everything that they do is for them. This everything that they eat is really not for us, our melanated people. So you really have to think about that.
Position in that regard when it comes to raw materials leaving the African continent. I understand that also within Francophone countries, I think Ivory Coast and I forget which other one, have also limited cocoa being given to, I think, Belgium or Sicily, or whether one of the two. It seems as though that there is a resurgence of the Renaissance, if I would call it that.
There is Hershey City in Pennsylvania. There is what's that city in the UK? I forget the city. Both cities are built out of cocoa out of West Africa.
Right.
Where is that cocoa city in Africa? Spirit that led us to an independent Zimbabwe, the same spirit that led us to an independent Namibia, independent Mozambique, independent Angola, independent Algeria, Mauritius, you name it.
Right.
That same spirit must be awoken. We go to the next phase of our war. We no longer need bazookas to fight this war. Right. This is a war of the mind. This is a war of enlightenment. This is a war of understanding what is really going on. The question is, how well do you love your children? How well do you love your grandchildren? Do you really want to leave this world the way it is for them? Right. If you love your children, next time you go into that boardroom and you're in a position of power, speak up. You're not speaking up for yourself. You're speaking up for your children and generations to come. That is the spirit that we need. Right. That is the kind of war that we are fighting. It is a war of
every hope.
Okay. Any comments on that? Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So like I said, you can hear the drum beat because it's that time. Just the atmosphere and the way that the Creator got people moving now. It's just like the brother was saying. You can see a separation taking place. And that's the spirit of the Most High, because we see what happened in the beginning. He says the man whom he formed, he put him in the garden, separated him from other people. And then he brought the Egyptians out, he brought the Israelites out of Egypt, separated them, took them through all these other countries, but took them to a land of their own, separated them. So we see the same thing happening now. If you're thinking like a Hebrew and looking and observing everything from a Hebrew perspective, you can see all this happening. It's unfolding at a rapid pace. Okay, like I said, you should have at least some of your bag packed, because it's gonna be over. It's gonna be all of a sudden when it do go down, because the underworkings is going on now as we speak. So with that being said, I'm gonna open it up for some Q&A. Anybody have any questions or comments about anything they came across in their research, or they heard on this channel, they want to talk about it? Okay. I'll play this little video right here. It's another sign that was showing you how these Dr. Al was talking earlier about how the Africans are afraid of white folks, but based on us on this side of the pond where we already been through all that drama with them, and we have a different type of perspective when it comes to that. We are, the people, most of the people that's waking up now, they don't even consider them. They pretty much eliminate them out of your mind, especially the Israelites is waking up. So this is a video right here showing how these Africans are starting to stand up for themselves. Okay, get it. Okay.
Ready to dive into the fascinating world of international politics and power relationships? Today, we start a fascinating look at the BRICS meeting, where South Africa's warning to the International Criminal Court, ICC, and the US has stirred up the international stage. Get ready for an interesting trip as we figure out what this warning means for international justice, sovereignty, and the delicate balance of power. Join us as we dig into the fascinating world of geopolitics and look at how the most important countries in the world affect each other. Before we talk about South Africa's warning, let's talk about what the BRICS meeting is all about. The BRICS countries are a powerful force on the world stage. Together, they have a lot of land, many different cultures, and a lot of economic power. The BRICS meeting gives these countries a chance to talk about and work together on a wide range of economic, political, and social problems. Their combined power questions traditional power structures, which change how the world is run and brings about change on a global scale. South Africa's warning to the International Criminal Court and the United States makes the BRICS meeting even more interesting. South Africa is making a stand on sovereignty, responsibility, and international justice with this warning. It shows that more and more...
Yeah, like I said, by them standing up, which is the Most High, the Lord of Hosts, all that work behind it, but by them standing up, it changed the dynamic. It's how we leave here. This beginning work is over.
Countries are thinking that international organizations like the International Criminal Court and global powers like the United States may need to be reevaluated and held responsible for what they do. The warning to the ICC could be seen as a challenge to the court's power, saying that its role in dealing with accused violations of human rights and war crimes should be looked at again. South Africa's position shows that it is worried about what it sees as racism and the politicization of international law. This shows how important it is to take a more balanced and fair approach. In the same way, the warning to the United States could be seen as a criticism of its deeds and interventions in other countries. It seems to be a call for more respect for national sovereignty and a move away from acts taken by one country that may not follow the rules of international law. During the high-stakes talks and power games at the BRICS meeting, South Africa's strong warning to the International Criminal Court and the United States sent shockwaves through the world of diplomacy. Get ready for a fascinating look behind the scenes at the forces that shape the world stage and challenge the way international justice has always been done. The warning from South Africa has big consequences for the BRICS countries and the rest of the world. On the one hand, it shows that the BRICS countries are serious about supporting a multipolar world order and putting an end to the West's dominance. It shows a desire to change the way power is distributed around the world and create an international system that is more fair and includes everyone. But the warning also shows how complicated and tense the BRICS Union is in and of itself. The 5 member nations all agree that global governance needs to be fixed, but they have different ideas about things like human rights, democracy, and the role of international organizations. Balancing these different points of view and figuring out how to handle sensitive geopolitical problems can be hard, and the warning is a reminder of how complicated the alliance is. Also, South Africa's warning makes me wonder about the delicate balance between sovereignty and responsibility. Even though it says that countries have the right to choose their own paths, it also raises concerns about the possibility of people getting away with things and the loss of universal principles of justice. Finding the right mix between sovereignty and accountability is still hard, and this warning suggests that these tensions need to be looked at more closely. As our thought-provoking trip comes to an end, we have a better idea of how the BRICS Summit works because of it. South Africa's warning is a strong reminder of how difficult it can be to balance national sovereignty and international responsibility. It goes against the rules that have always been in place and makes us think about the role of global organizations. But let's think about how complicated world politics are as the talks and decisions at the BRICS meeting continue to change the way international justice works and how power is distributed around the world.
Okay. Any comments on that? So you can see how everything that's been prophesied is tied up in that. Because when these people come on the scene, when they finally come on the scene, they're talking about justice, and they're saying that things or crimes that was committed a long time ago, they haven't been dealt with. All that. That's transvest slave trade. All that is coming. You know, yeah, and that's the reason why these Europeans in the West is kicking like little girls, because they're gonna bring it to them. Once they get where they need to be at, that's what's gonna happen. That's gonna get us up out of here. Okay. So nobody have no comments? Okay, so I'm gonna read out of Book of Jasher, pertaining to get some information that's not in the King James, pertaining to Joseph's time and the story of Joseph that happened in Egypt. So I'm in chapter 48 of Jasher, starting at verse 1. It says, in those days after the death of Isaac, the Lord commanded and caused a famine upon the whole earth. At that time, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was sitting upon his throne in the land of Egypt, and he lay in his bed and dreamed dreams. And the Pharaoh saw in his dream that he was standing by the side of the river of Egypt. And while he was standing, he saw, and behold, 7 fat-fleshed and well-favored kine came up out of the river, and 7 other kings, lean-fleshed and ill-favored, came after them, and the 7 ill-favored ones swallowed up the well-favored ones, and still their appearance was ill as at first. And he woke, and he slept again, and he dreamed a second time, and he saw, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good, and 7 thin ears blast with the east wind sprang up after them, and the thin ears swallowed up the full ones, and the Pharaoh awoke out of his dream. And in the morning the king remembered his dream, and his spirit was sadly troubled on account of his dreams. And the king hastened and sent and called for all the musicians of Egypt and the wise men, and they came and stood before the Pharaoh. It says, and the king said unto them, I have dreamed dreams, and there is none to interpret them. And they said unto the king, relate thy dream to thy servant, and let us hear them, to thy servants, and let us hear them. And the king related his dream to them, and they all answered and said with one voice to the king, "May the king live forever." And this is the interpretation of the dreams. The seven good kings which thou did see did know 7 daughters that would be born unto thee in the latter days. And the 7 kings which thou saw come up after them and swallow them up, or the sign that the daughters which will be born unto thee will all die in the lifetime of the king. And that which thou didst see in the second dream of 7 full or good ears of corn coming up upon one stalk. This is their interpretation, that thou wilt build upon thyself in the latter days 7 cities throughout the land of Egypt, and that which thou sawest of the 7 blasted ears of corn springing up after them and swallowing them up, while thou didst behold them with thine eyes, is for a sign that the cities which thou wilt build will be destroyed in the latter days in the lifetime of the king. And when they spoke these words, the king did not incline his ear to their words, neither did he fix his heart upon them, for the king knew his wisdom, that they did not give a proper interpretation of the dream. And when they had finished speaking before the king answered them and saying, "What is this thing that you have spoken unto me? Surely you have uttered falsehoods and spoken lies. Therefore now give the proper interpretation of my dream, that you may not die." Okay. Okay. And the king commanded after this, and he sent and called again for the other wise men. They came and stood before the king, and the king related his dream to them, and they answered him according to the first interpretation. And the king's anger was kindled, and he was very wroth. And the king said unto them, "Surely you speak lies and utter falsehoods in what you have said." And the king commanded that a proclamation should be issued throughout all the land of Egypt, saying, It is resolved by the king and his great men, that any wise man who knows and understands the interpretation of dreams and will not come this day before the king shall die. And the man that will declare unto the king the proper interpretation of his dream, there shall be given unto him all that he will require from the king. And all the wise men of the land of Egypt came before the king, together with all the musicians and the sorcerers that were in Egypt and in Goshen and in Ramesses and Takbanak, whatever that word is, and in Zor, and in all the places on the borders of Egypt. And they all stood before the king, and all the nobles of the princesses and all the attendants belonging to the king came together from all the cities of Egypt. And they all sat before the king, and the king related his dream before his wise men and the princes, and all that sat before the king were astonished at the vision. And all the wise men who were before the king were greatly divided in their interpretation of his dream. Some of them interpreted them to the king, saying the seven good king or 7 kings who from the king's issue will be raised over Egypt, and the 7 bad king or 7 princes who will stand up against them in the latter days and destroy them, and the 7 ears of corn or the 7 great princes belonging to Egypt, who will fall in the hands of 7 less powerful princes of their enemies in the wars of our Lord the King. And some of them interpreted to the king in this manner, saying, the 7 good king and the strong cities of Egypt, and the 7 bad king or the 7 nations of the land of Canaan, who will come against the 7 cities of Egypt in the latter days and destroy them. And that which thou sawest in the second dream of 7 good and bad ears of corn is a sign that the government of Egypt will again return to thy seed as at first. And in his reign, the people of the cities of Egypt return again against the 7 cities of Canaan, who are stronger than they are, who will destroy them, and the government of Egypt will return to thy seed. And some of them said unto the king, This is the interpretation of the dream. The 7 good kings or 7 queens, whom thou wilt take for wives in the latter days, and the 7 bad kings denote that those women will all die in the lifetime of the king. And the 7 good and bad ears of corn, which thou didst see in the second dream, are 14 children. And it will be in the latter days that they will stand up and fight against themselves, and 7 of them will smite the 7 that are more powerful. And some of them said these words unto the king, saying, the 7 good kings denote the 7 children will be born to thee, and they will lay 7 of the children's children in the latter days, and the 7 good ears of corn which thou didst see in the second dream are those princes against whom 7 others, less more powerful princes, will fight and destroy them in the latter days, and avenge the children's cause, and the government will again return to thy seed. And the king heard all the words of the wise men of Egypt, and their interpretation of the dreams, and none of them pleased the king. And the king knew in his wisdom that they did not altogether speak correctly in all these words, for this was from the Lord, to frustrate the words of the wise men of Egypt, in order that Joseph might go forth from the house of the confinement, and in order that he should become great in Egypt. And the king saw that none among all the wise men and musicians of Egypt spoke correctly to him. And the king's wrath was kindled, and his anger burned within him. And the king commanded that all the wise men and the musicians should go out before him, and they all went out from before the king with shame and disgrace. And the king commanded that the proclamation be sent throughout Egypt to slay all the musicians that were in Egypt, and not one of them should be suffered to live. And the captain of the guards belonging to the king rose up, and each man drew his sword, and they began to smite the musicians of Egypt and the wise men. And after this, Murad, chief butler to the king, came and bowed down before the king and sat before him. And the butler said unto the king, may the king live forever, and his government be exalted in the land. Thou was angry with thy servant in those days. Now 2 years passed, and did place me in the war. And I was for some time in the war, I and the chief of the bakers. I am chief of the bakers. And there was with us a Hebrew servant belonging to the captain of the guard. His name was Joseph. His master had been angry with him and placed him in the house of confinement, and he attended unto us. And in some time after, when we were in the war, we dreamed dreams in one night. I and the chief of the bakers, we dreamed, each man according to his interpretation of his dream. And we came in the morning and told him to the servant, and he interpreted to us our dreams. Each man according to his dream did he correctly interpret. Say, and it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so was the event. There fell not to the ground any of his words. And now, therefore, my lord and king, do not slay the people of Egypt for naught. Behold, that slave is still confined in the house by the captain of the guard, his master, in the house of confinement. It is pleased, if it please the king, let him send for him, that he may come before thee, and he will make known to thee the correct interpretation of the dream which thou didst dream. And the king heard the words of the chief butler, and the king ordered that the wise men of Egypt should not be slain. And the king ordered his servants to bring Joseph before him. And the king said unto them, go to him, and do not terrify him, lest he be confused and will not know to speak properly. And the servants of the king went to Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And the king's servant shaved him, and he changed his prison garment. And he came before the king. And the king was sitting upon his royal throne in a priestly dress, girded around with a golden ephod and fine gold which was upon his sparkle, and the carbuncle, and the ruby, and the emerald, together with all precious stones that were upon the king's head, dazzled the eye. And Joseph wondered greatly at the king. And the throne upon which the king sat was covered with gold and silver, and with onyx stones. and it had 70 steps. And it was that custom throughout the land of Egypt that every man who came to speak to the king, if he was a prince or one that was estimable in the sight of the king, he ascended to the king's throne as far as 31st step, and the king would descend to the 36th step and speak with him. If he was one of the common people, he ascended to the 3rd step, and the king would descend to the 4th and speak to him. Their custom was, moreover, that any man who understood to speak in all 70 languages, he ascended to the 70th step and went up and spoke till he reached the king. And any man who could not complete the 70, he ascended as many steps as the languages which he knew to speak in. And it was customary in those days in Egypt that no one should reign over them but who understood the speech in the 70 languages. And when Joseph came before the king, he bowed down to the ground before the king, and he ascended to the 3rd step. And the king sat upon the 4th step and spake with Joseph. And the king said unto Joseph, I dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter to interpret it properly. And I command this day that all the Egyptians of Egypt and the wise men thereof should come before me, and I related my dreams to them, and no one has properly interpreted them to me. And after this, I this day heard concerning thee that thou art a wise man, and can correctly interpret every dream that thou hearest. And Joseph answered the Pharaoh, saying, let the Pharaoh relate his dream that he dreamed, and surely the interpretation belongeth to God. And the Pharaoh related his dream to Joseph, the dream of the king and the dream of the ears of corn. And the king left off speaking. And Joseph was then clothed with the Spirit of God before the king, and he knew all the things that would befall the king from the day forward. And he knew the proper interpretation of the king's dream, and he spake before the king. And Joseph found favor in the sight of the king, and the king inclined the ears and his heart, and he heard the words of Joseph. And Joseph said unto the king, do not imagine that thou art 2 dreams, for it is only one dream. For that which God has chosen to do throughout the land, he has shown to the king in his dream. And this is the proper interpretation of the dream. The 7 good kings and the ears of corn are 7 years. And the 7 bad kings and the ears of corn also are 7 years. It is one dream. Behold, the 7 years that are coming there will be a great plenty throughout our land. And after that, the 7 years of famine will follow them, a very grievous famine. And all the plenty will be forgotten from the land, and the famine will consume the inhabitants of the land. The king dreamed one dream, and the dream was therefore repeated unto the Pharaoh, because the thing is established by God, and God will surely bring it to pass. Now, therefore, I will give thee counsel and deliver thy soul and the souls of the inhabitants of the land from the evil of the famine that thou seek throughout the kingdom for a man very discreet and wise, who knoweth all the affairs of the government, and appoint him to superintend over the land of Egypt. So let's look at this right here, right quick, because this is huge. So Joseph was in prison. He been in prison, prisoner. You know, he at the bottom of the food chain. So they bring him out, clean him up, and now he's standing before the Pharaoh to give him the dream. Look at his countenance change right here in 56. The king dreamed one dream. This is how David talking, Joseph talking to him. The king dreamed one dream, and the dream was therefore repeated unto the Pharaoh before the thing is established by God, and God will surely bring it to pass. Now therefore I will give thee, see that? The guy he talking to him. Now therefore I will give thee counsel and deliver thy soul and the soul of the inhabitants of the land from the evil of the famine that thou seekest throughout thy kingdom, for a man very discreet and wise, who knoweth all the affairs of the government, and appoint him to be superintendent over the land of Egypt. Look at that. That's how the Most High works. It ain't all the money in the world can't Can't divert that. That's what's getting ready to happen. So it says 58, and let the man whom thou placest over Egypt appoint officers under him, that they gather in all the food in the good years that are coming, and let them lay up corn and deposit it deposit it in thy appointed stores, and let them keep that food for 7 years of famine, that it may be found for thee and thy people and thy whole land, and that thou and thy land be not cut off by the famine. So let me show you what's really going on right quick before I continue to read. Okay, let me get it right quick. And this is what you have to understand. So we know that Yahweh is in heaven, right? And he created 7 angels. And these 7 angels is the eyes of the Lord, right? So wherever these angels at, whatever they see, he see. So whenever they go somewhere and they get ready to do something or speak, either he can allow them to speak, or they're gonna speak what he told them, or either he's gonna speak what he told them, or either he can speak through them himself. He take over and speak through them. And we see it right here. This is an example. Exodus chapter 3. I was telling you this is what the prophets do when they go prophesy. The Lord take over. When they get where they're going, he take over. He's speaking through them. So it says in Exodus chapter 3, it says Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, right? The mountain of God, even the Horeb. But it's an angel on the mountain, right? 2, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in the flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Then 3, Moses said, I will not turn aside to see this great sight, while the bush is not burned. And when the Lord, we know that it was Lord of hosts, when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, then Yahweh called unto him out of the midst of the bush. See that? So the burning fire is the Lord of hosts. But when Moses got to him, Yahweh talked to him and spoke to him. So we just see right here, he brought Joseph out of the dungeon, cleaned him up, and brought him in front of the Pharaoh. Then he took over. We see the same thing with Balaam. Balaam went into a trance, and he started speaking through Balaam to the people. So this is what he's doing right here. That's why his counters and his authority changing. So it says, let me give it again. It says 56. It says, like I said, he's been a prisoner at the bottom of the food chain. Now all of a sudden, he up here standing before the Pharaoh, all these wise men, musicians, and then this is his train of thought. This is his conversation. He says, the king dreamed one dream. The dream was therefore repeated unto the Pharaoh because of the thing that is established by God. And God will shortly bring it to pass. Now you're going to not only tell him the dream, tell him what he got to do. See that? So it says, now, therefore, I will give thee counsel. See that? He just dug him out of prison. I will now, therefore, give thee counsel and deliver thy soul. See that? He dealing with, not only dealing with the Pharaoh's soul, he's dealing with all the just around everybody's soul. They just dug him out of the prison house. Okay? So he says, and God will surely, okay, let me get it back up. It says, now therefore I will give thee counsel and deliver thy soul and the souls of thy inhabitants of the land from the evil of the famine, that they may seek throughout thy kingdom for a man very discreet and wise, who knoweth all affairs of the government, and appoint him to superintend over the land of Egypt. So it's the Lord of hosts talking through Joseph to the Pharaoh. Well, guess who that man is? Joseph. He's setting Joseph up. See that? So then it says, and let the man whom thou placest over Egypt appoint officers under him, that they gather in all the food in the good years that are coming, and let them lay up corn and deposit it in the appointed store, and let them keep that food for 7 years of famine, that it may be found for thee and thy people and the whole land, and that thou and thy land be not cut off by famine, and let all inhabitants of the land be also ordered that they gather in every man the produce of his field and all sorts of food during the 7 good years, and that the place in it in their stores, that it may be found for them in the days of famine, that they may live upon it. This is the proper interpretation of thy dream, and it is the counsel, and this is the counsel given to save thy soul and the souls of all the subjects. And the king answered and said unto Joseph, who said and who knoweth that thy words are correct. And he said unto the king, this shall be a sign for thee respecting all my words, that they are true, and that my advice is good for thee. Behold, thy wife sitteth this day upon a stool to deliver, and she will bear thee a son, and thou wilt rejoice with him. And when thy child shall have gone forth from his mother's womb, thy firstborn son that has been born 2 years back shall die, and thou shalt be confounded, and thou shalt be comforted in the child that will be born unto thee this day. And Joseph finished speaking these words to the king, and he bowed down to the king, and he went out. And when Joseph had gone out from the king's presence, those signs which Joseph had spoken unto the king came to pass on that day. And the queen bore a son on that day, and the king heard the glad tidings about his son, and he rejoiced. And when the reporter had gone forth from the king's presence, the king's servants found the firstborn son of the king fallen dead upon the ground. And there was a great lamentation and noise in the king's house. And the king heard it, and he said, what is the noise and the lamentations that I have heard in the house? And they told the king that his firstborn son had died. Then the king knew that all Joseph's words that he had spoken were correct, and the king was counseled for his son by the child that was born to him on that day, as Joseph had spoken. So let's look at that right quick. So, like I said before, this ain't nothing new under the sun. So my thing is, what I want to shine a light on the most is, let's go to this dilemma that we in right now, as far as the Old and New Testament. We know that the Old Testament is the Holy Scriptures that the Most High, our forefathers wrote down and gave us the reference. They attached JC and these other books of New Testament. They attached it and gave it to us to throw us off. So like I was saying before, when look at all the bullshit ass interpretations these supposed to be learned men that had gave him. They way off the mark. It'd be the same place now. Everybody was off, way off. So so my point is this: those are generations. Those counselors and musicians and all those learned men. Those are houses, family houses, that their knowledge has been passed on from one generation to the next until this event happened. But none of them ain't no shit. All of them were stole off. This the importance of, you keep hearing me saying, thinking like a Hebrew. Ain't nobody out there thinking like no Hebrew. They're going along with the status quo. It's two, like I said, it's two types of knowledge. It's two types of wisdom. I showed you how they are associated wisdom with a woman in the pagan world. That's one knowledge. But then we know the knowledge that we deal with from the Lord, from Yahweh, comes from the Lord of hosts and these angels he created. So it's two different trains. It's two, Most High have what he got, what he doing over here, and the wickedness and these fallen angels and Michael. I mean, not Michael, but Samuel and them. They got their knowledge, and we see right here they was off. They came up with all kind of shit. So we look at the same thing now when you turn on television with everything that we see. The Most High says, nothing a leaf can't fall from a tree and hit the ground that he don't know nothing about. So everything that's happening on this planet has been prophesied about. The Most High know about it, but they got it all wrong. On TBN and CNN and all these mega pastors, they got all this shit wrong. They got the whole story wrong. Instead of trying to incorporate JC into the story. When JC, the New Testament, Paul don't have shit to do with what was going on in these last days. It's all that was all concocted. And this is a perfect example right here. All of them gave their interpretation, didn't know what the hell they was talking about. And you got to think about that today. The people that's listening to that, the same thing going on. They don't know what the hell they talking about. Okay, and so Joseph he had to go get a Hebrew, or Israelite, and he came and brought him out of there, and Joseph came right on with it. So like I was saying before, how did Joseph come on with it? Like, it's a system that's already built in us. We got a pineal gland. It's melanin. All that play a factor. That's why he keep on saying thy seed. Your seed. You from over here. Don't mingle with these people. Don't mingle with those people. That's why he's saying that. He got when he built Adam just for that. To communicate with him. With the pineal gland. Notice the Pharaoh, he going about his daily business. The Most High showed up. The angel showed up and gave him a dream. He going about his regular business, doing what he normally do. But the angel came to him and gave him a dream, just like all other dreams. But these dreams and these angels, all that is tied into a certain system, a certain knowledge. That's apart from other knowledge, the other shit that people talking about or think they know about. It's totally different. It ain't the same. And so, like I said, just like it's like night and day. You can see from the interpretation all of those they gave, and then to the final interpretation, the truth of the matter was brought by Joseph. So when you're in your day-to-day endeavors and your wanderings, keep that in mind. You got all these nut buckets on. If you, like I said, 2023. If you ain't somebody ain't came and put no bug in your ear yet that who JC is, you steady trying to incorporate him into these end times. You a nut bucket. You fall off. You should run as soon as you hear that. Because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And you really don't have time to even try to explain it. Okay? Any comments?
Shalom, everyone.
Okay.
That is something when Joseph told him about the dream and his son, right? And told him that it would happen that day. It happened that day. Like, I just really caught on to that. He was like, yeah, it happened that day. Yeah. And then in Genesis, as he breaks down the dream to the Pharaoh, right? He acknowledges the Lord of hosts. He says it is not in me. He acknowledges him, right? Yes.
Yeah. And then when you go back, you see a pattern. All of them do that. That's what Mordecai did. So it's a pattern. That's what I mean by thinking like a Hebrew. So if they ain't doing that, then you know there's something wrong. It's a dead calendar line. Just like Moses, when he told, just like that right there, he knew the Pharaoh wasn't gonna take it for face value. So he already had that in the bag to tell him about his son gonna die. So you say, what are you talking about? What happened with Moses before Moses went? He showed Moses how to put his hand in his garment and bring it out in his left. Right?
Right.
Moses went before the Pharaoh and told him such, and then he said, no, I'm supposed to do that. No, that. Then Moses showed him, he gave him two signs. He showed the sign about the snake, turning the staff into a snake, and he showed him how to put his hand up in his bosom and bring it out his left. because he knew they weren't gonna be. So we already had those signs in reserve to get their mind right. Same with Amalek when he stole Sarah. Like I said, he gone by these pagans. You know what I mean? So he gone by his business. He done something, he did something wicked as hell, and he gone on by his business. But the Most High showed up. He got a pound gland in his head, and he showed up and gave him a dream and told him that's Abraham's wife. That's my friend's wife. You take him back. If you don't, I'm gonna tear this whole place up. So, but we read over that. We don't see the parallels and the process of how this stuff is happening. And the Most High change not. The same thing. These, like I was the book that I wrote with giving you all the characteristics of these angels. These angels' characteristics don't change. They doing one thing for 1,000 years and then doing something else another 1,000. They got their name tell you who they is. They've been doing that from day one. So they ain't finna change. That's what kills the New Testament. When somebody come with that New Testament mumbo jumbo, these angels don't change. They got the same role and characteristics from the beginning to this day. Yeah. Anybody else got anything before we go close out? Something they want to talk about? Everybody
Brother,
good?
yes, sir. I just want to point out one more thing. In Genesis, is it chapter 41? I think it is, but where the Pharaoh, it says he's calling on all the magicians of Egypt, right, and all the wise men, and no one could answer him concerning his dream, right? So they
Right.
say, hey, there's this Hebrew servant that has
Right.
been telling us about our dreams. So you got to look at that, just like you say, the Lord, he changes not, right? So these
Right.
magicians and these so-called wise men, they serving somebody else, totally different. That's why, you know what I'm saying, they couldn't
Right.
offer him any knowledge concerning his dream. Joseph knew he served the living God. So I was just thinking
Right.
about that when it said, he called on all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men.
Right, exactly, right. And then like I said, you gotta look at that too. It's a system. Where's his wisdom and his knowledge and all that coming from that these wise men have?
Right.
And we know it ain't no damn good because they couldn't even interpret the dream. The knowledge they didn't receive, it don't line up with what an angel brought the dream. So whatever knowledge they got, it came from somewhere else because it ain't coinciding with the angel brought. But Joseph lined right up with him.
Yes, sir.
And we see the same thing today. Like that's my point. Because you see how off they are.
Yes, sir.
All
He
this
said it's
mumbo
gonna
jumbo.
come to pass today, and it came to pass today.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there's something, like I said, he said the self same day when they left out of Egypt. So whatever the prophecy was, the timeline, that day when that he prophesied, they left. So you have to come and apply that to the day. You say 1619 was the last day for our 400-year captivity, but we still here. So somebody off. We still here. It's 4 years later. We still here. We still the same shit that was happening. The same people that brought about all this scourge that's on us. We still here. So we got to go back and redo and rethink the prophecy. Rethink what you came up with because it ain't lining up. Something ain't right. That's Hebrew 101. Ain't that something?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. So anybody else got anything? Okay. So with that being said, I'll see everybody tomorrow for our 8 o'clock class. We'll be reading through the Tanakh. I want to say shalom, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. 8. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom, everyone.